A year ago, we thought the season would be dominated by a single team, and now we start one where uncertainty and excitement await us at every turn of the calendar. Welcome then to the first round of the Formula One World Championship, the Australian Grand Prix. After 5 years, Australia once again hosts the opening round of Formula One, just like old times, to kick off the final season of the ground effect regulations. In a year where competitiveness promises to be a delight, with 4 teams that could potentially be champions by season's end. But the good work must begin in Australia and its Albert Park circuit, which has been reformed in recent years to be much faster. So it will be the first test to see who did their homework in the winter, who solved their problems, who is the real favorite, and who will have to work throughout the year, in mysteries that will be solved on a dizzying and very fast wall circuit. It's been a very long wait, but a magical year of the fastest car sport on the planet awaits us in a season that could be legendary. Let's start the preview of the Australian Grand Prix, 2025 of the Formula. Blessed are those who have had patience, because of them, and only them, will be the kingdom of Formula One. And after 3 months from the last competition that left McLaren as the Constructors' champion, Formula One returns to kick off the 75th season in its history. In 2025, the last of the technical regulations, which premiered in 2022, which will give way in this 2025 to a very even season in many terms. And it will be different from what we see at this start, to what we see later when we get to the Spanish Grand Prix. In addition to it being difficult decisions to see if some teams bet on a good result in 2025, or everything, to the change and restart of the 2026 season. But first, we must go through the season's inaugural round, which returns to its historical place on the calendar. And that will give an indication of what to expect, at least in the next big prizes of the season. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's start with this preview and move on to the circuit section and get to know the Australian layout of Round 1 of the Formula One World Championship. Melbourne, Australia. Its circuit is Albert Park, located precisely in this region. 5.2 kilometers of route, 58 laps, 14 curves, 4 DRC zones, and 4 potential zones for overtaking. Characterized as a semi-urban track, where competition takes place inside a public park, with a maximum recorded speed of 328 kilometers per hour. The first sector is the most critical for classification, being the most technical. It combines hard braking with slow turns and is usually the one that makes a difference when it comes to the time trial lap. It has 2 drag reduction system zones, one on the main straight and the other on the straight after exiting turn 2. So it serves very well to stick to rivals or try maneuvers, although it is a particularly narrow area. The key in this sector are the exits of the turns, as the first 4 are chicanes that will require a correct entry into them, and a clean exit with good traction. Mainly turns 1 and 2, in order to maximize the overtaking opportunities that the curve offers you. Mainly in the braking of the third, making the slow turns of this first much more technical part, the most interesting element that this first sector of the Australian layout has. The second sector is completely opposite as we now move to the fastest part of the circuit, in a very dizzying way. This section lacks slow turns but features a drag reduction system zone, situated in the high speed area between turns 8 and 9. And thanks to its distance and the slipstream, it is usually the best area to make any overtaking maneuver on this track, which makes it a vital area to have top speed in the car. Because without slow curves, the highest speeds are deployed, which will be very necessary in the long speed zone that is found at this point. So those cars that suffer, particularly in the area of top speed, will be in very serious trouble. And those who are faster in this sector will find a complete oasis. The third sector combines both technical skill and speed, which are advantageous in this track section. It has the fastest and most challenging curves of the entire circuit. The 9 and the 10, which is a chicane of monstrous speeds that test the grip and stability of the car. The curve's exit is crucial, as it leads directly into the 4th and last drag reduction system zone, which is another great opportunity to overtake if you bravely go against the opponent in the braking of turn 11, and obviously if you come out well attached from the past turns. The rest of this part of the circuit is a journey of slow turns, which again prioritizes the exit of them, having traction and grip, especially in the final turn of this circuit. That leads into the main straight, where the DRC is activated for the first time, up to the braking of turn number 1, thus becoming the most key sector in the race, especially to be able to pursue or escape from rivals. The Australian circuit, since its renovation, has been characterized by being a much faster track, but it stands out for testing the balance of the car and top speed as two of the most important elements, making the first sector traction and good exit from slow corners the most important element. In the second, the most important element is top speed, and in the third, stability in cornering and exiting it. Another factor to consider is the high likelihood of a safety car deployment at this track. Being a circuit with walls close to the track and short runoffs, accidents often cause the appearance of the safety car. The latest version of this circuit has seen the safety car deployed in 2 of 3 races, with the most dangerous points on this circuit being turn number 6, which is a very fast turn. The expanded runoff area this year is an improvement from previous years when it caused many headaches. As a high-speed precision turn, even a small error can cause you to hit the gravel and crash into the wall. And the second most dangerous part of this circuit is turns 9 and 10, thanks to their extreme speed. Any misstep on either of these 2 turns can cause the driver to lose control of the car and end up going off the escape route. In the best case scenario, in the worst, it could cause an accident that results in some kind of withdrawal or the appearance of a safety car. And considering how easily it can come out on this circuit, a safety car can ruin someone's race or benefit it. So teams usually consider the presence of the safety car as something very important in their strategies. Elements such as traction and brakes are usually not so punished, and the cars require a medium aerodynamic load configuration to deal with sectors 1 and 3, which are quite technical, but that leaves you enough speed to fly and bring out all the power in the second sector and the first part of the third. It's not a particularly easy track for overtaking, even with the 4 drag reduction system zones. Most of the straights on the track are short. It's a narrow circuit, and generally, the best opportunity to overtake usually comes from the 3rd and 4th drag reduction system zones. So, on a scale of 1 to 5, the difficulty of overtaking would be a 3.5, as it's not easy, but maneuvers can be made. Therefore, it's one of those circuits where qualifying well is required because comebacks are very hard to pull off. In this pit lane, you drive at 80 kilometers per hour, and it's a relatively short transit because, on average, the transit with the pit stop usually ends between 16 and 17 seconds, being a pit lane that doesn't punish as much. And the level of tire wear is at a low to medium point. The track is not particularly abrasive with the tires and the stress, and the lateral loads to which the tire is subjected are not particularly high, being at a particularly medium point. Therefore, the ideal strategy would be 2 stops with priority use of the hard tire, which will be the one that covers most of the stints of this Grand Prix. And the tires available for this competition will be the 103, 104, and 100 E5, which represent the soft range of the Italian manufacturer. Australia. It's a fast street circuit with the usual challenges of such a track layout. Walls close to the track, few escape routes, and those that exist are gravel, making it a track where mistakes are very costly. A dizzying track that combines slow turns with short straights and very fast turns, becoming a challenging layout worthy of the inauguration of the Formula One season. Therefore, being a track of these characteristics, we can expect anything at the time when the drivers roll around the public park of Melbourne. The 2025 preseason has thrown up confusing data that this first date of the year must resolve. Like, who are the real favorites? Who have been hiding, and who have problems? And the time has come to take off the masks and bring out the true potential of the cars and start racing for the world titles of the 2025 season. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the one-by-one of teams and drivers of this first date of the Formula One World Championship. It's been many years since that last time McLaren arrived at the first race of the year as favorites. And for the first time in over 10 years, that condition is repeated, as the Woking team seems to have found the best version of their car to start this 2025. And the preseason tests marked a surprising pace that the MCL 39 has, especially in race and tire treatment. So many consider that the favorite team to take this first round of the World Cup is precisely the Papaya team. The only weakness this car apparently showed is the balance in the rear of the single-seater, which causes it to oversteer, which was particularly accentuated in low-speed turns. Despite this, the car seems very fast and all competitors fear it may be the biggest threat at the start of the World Championship. So, McLaren knows it needs to get the best result this weekend to start, the defense of the Constructors' Championship and the pursuit of the Drivers' 1. Norris and Piastri start this fight from the beginning. So, at least at the beginning of the season, either of them could be a title contender. Speaking precisely of Oscar Piastri, this weekend he races at home and has the best opportunity he's ever had to take the victory on home soil. So if he wants to start his journey for the world title in a good way, he should start off on the right foot. And in front of his people, he started pressuring his teammate. Because opportunities like the ones he will have in 2025, there is a possibility that they may not have them again in their entire life. Ferrari starts the season with many unknowns after a preseason that revealed little about the pace and potential of the red single-seater. The internal voices are neither entirely favorable nor bad. After the preseason, Ferrari had some issues, considerable wear in long runs compared to their rivals. Some details with the handling of the SF25 and Lewis Hamilton, their new driver for this season. He couldn't have a full preseason and couldn't perform a race simulation that would help him adapt to the single-seater. They are expected to move the missing test to the Friday of the Australian Grand Prix. So Ferrari doesn't arrive in particularly the best conditions for this first confrontation. Even so, Ferrari is expected to be strong, especially on a fast circuit like Australia's. But they know there are things that need to be done to improve the pace and the operating window of the single-seater. Although I personally wouldn't rule them out of the fight or the possibility of victory in this Australian Grand Prix, especially if we have a chaotic weekend. So perhaps, even though Ferrari may not start the season as a favorite, we'll have to see the work they can do. And if they manage to have a surprising evolution, like the one in the second half of last season, don't count them out for later. In the season, 2025. Red Bull raises the most questions among the top 4 teams as the season begins. This follows the disastrous second half of 2024, and a preseason plagued with problems and limited accumulated mileage. Despite a sense of calm within Red Bull, they've announced they're not completely satisfied with the RB21. And Pierre Wache himself commented that the preseason was not as smooth as the team expected. And Max Verstappen said things are not bad, but there is a lot of work to be done. Verstappen himself ruled out a win in Australia, but hopes to improve after a few upcoming races. The potential of where Red Bull could be is a complete unknown. Some specialists rank them as the second team, while others rank them as the fourth. Red Bull has managed to fix many of their past errors, which appears to be the current reality. In 2024, they don't seem to initially have the pace to challenge the strongest teams of this 2025. And if they don't quickly find the pace, could we be looking at the end of the Verstappen era in terms of titles if they don't give the Dutchman the car to be able to battle? No. So we'll have to see if Red Bull has hidden something during this preseason. Or at least at the beginning of 2025, the defense of the World Drivers' title is going to be a bit complicated. Could we be facing a competitive season from Mercedes or basically have the same problems we saw in 2024? And the fact is that this year's preseason has been pretty good, with no reliability issues, speed, and a lot of mileage. But the preseason tests were in cold conditions, which were precisely what benefited their single-seater the most last season. So this Grand Prix, which will take place in warmer conditions than those seen in the preseason, should reveal more information. What to expect from the German team, and whether the promising pace they showed can be replicated on most of the calendar circuits. Even so, a tough race is expected. In the long runs in preseason, this team showed high degradation compared to their rivals. Despite this, many rate Mercedes as the second or third team of 2025, even above Red Bull. Because, as I told you, even though they suffered wear in their long-run simulations in preseason, their pace was quite solid. But precisely we will have to see if they manage to repeat these conditions at Albert Park, and perhaps with a good evolutionary race of the car, gradually getting closer to victory. Because even though they might be in this Grand Prix fighting to win, at least in the initial draft, it seems complicated that they can do it under normal conditions. Aston Martin, the team that creates the most uncertainty while also leaving the most doubts after the preseason, had a quite problematic start to the year, with low mileage which didn't fully reveal the single-seater's true potential. The team's fight for points will likely be difficult, especially early in the World Championship, but there is a positive side to it. Adrian Newey is officially part of the team and is already working for them. We'll see if he brings some of his magic to the 2025 car. And what if from the middle of the season we see a small leap forward from Aston Martin? Or if everything definitely starts to go for 2026? The year Aston Martin is waiting to battle? What is certain is that perhaps we are facing a start of the year where Aston Martin can be quite disappointing, but we will only confirm that when the race ends at the Albert Park circuit. The Alpine team is the mid-table favorites, after a quite strong and surprising preseason. Very different from what was experienced in 2024, and a lot of strength is expected from Alpine, which can be a solid candidate to score consistently this season. Despite the positive outlook, Alpine faces a situation that needs monitoring throughout the season. And it's the issue of what will happen with Jack Dujan, as many rumors have emerged during the winter with the hiring of Franco Colapinto as a reserve driver. Whether he will replace him sooner or later, that he only has a few races in his contract, and a long list of other things that we have been hearing all winter, and I'm sure many of you have already heard. So, the particular situation of Dujan will be one of the most striking things we have at the start of this season. Luckily, he is racing at home before his fans this weekend, and the best way for him to silence all those rumors is by getting good results. We'll see if Dujan can deliver a great performance under pressure at his Grand Prix of hunting. Or if, on the contrary, race by race, we start realizing that this guy is fired, they just haven't told him yet. The Haas team faces a key season for them, in a year where it will be the first full season with the technical collaboration they have closed with Toyota. So, despite a challenging start to the season, it remains to be seen if their evolutionary path allows them to be consistent point fighters. Despite an unrevealing preseason, the team is optimistic about the upcoming season. But at least the battle for points is going to be quite complicated, seeing how strong Alpine and the Williams team closed the preseason. So, we'll have to see if the Americans can start to deploy a pace we haven't seen in the preseason. Or if at least they start their journey slowly in 2025. The preseason of Racing Bulls has not been particularly promising. In this season opener, they are anticipated to be among the teams competing for points, but perhaps the weakest in this particular area. However, they know perfectly well within the team that the fight will be tight, and at least they do not see the points as something impossible. We will have to see what is also shown in the car on this first date, because definitely if they start the season badly and cannot recover quickly, they will be those structures that start thinking very early in the season. 2026, leaving 2025. The preseason showed that Williams can make a huge leap forward in terms of performance compared to what was seen last season. They were fast, consistent, and Carlos Sainz felt particularly comfortable with the car in all the sessions they conducted. However, they have slowed down, and even though they are considered one of the teams favored to lead the mid-table, Carlos has stated not to anticipate battles for wins or podiums, and that his specific fight will be to consistently earn points. Many put them as favorites for the 5th place of constructors. But what is certain is that, at least in this first race, they have a high probability of scoring points and starting off on the right foot towards 2026. Don't expect much from this Exauber. Their preseason was poor and they're expected to have the worst car on the grid. Points are expected to be nearly impossible to achieve under normal conditions, just like last season. If this becomes a reality, Sauber will likely be one of those teams, immediately considering plans for 2026, having few opportunities to do something relevant during this season. The weather park is one of our traditions on this channel. This weekend, Albert Park in Melbourne may provide many surprises that enliven a grand prize. Exciting and at the same time chaotic. For Friday and Saturday, no rain is expected, although it is expected to be somewhat cloudy, although the highest temperatures of the weekend are expected on Saturday, especially during qualifying. However, on race day Sunday, as of the date we recorded this video, there is a 45% chance of light rain at the Australian Grand Prix. The probability has been increasing quite a bit since yesterday, so it's a very real possibility that we'll have the first rainy race of the season this weekend. Obviously, this probability can increase or decrease by Sunday, but at least for now, let's prepare for a cloudy Sunday but with a high probability of rain during the Australian Grand Prix. Finally, in these previews, we will review the circuit's historical data and the Grand Prix, just as a bit of trivia from this race weekend on Australian soil. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final section of the preview, the section of the historical data of the Formula One Grand Prix. Historically, Australia has hosted the Australian Grand Prix at only 2 venues as part of the official Formula calendars. From 1985 to 1995, it was run on the Adelaide Street Circuit in this same city, and subsequently from 1996. Up to date, Albert Park in Melbourne is the venue for this Grand Prix, whose circuit has only had 2 changes since the birth of this Grand Prix. The version run from 1996 to 2019, which had the Clark chicane as turns 9 and 10 Ds, was redesigned in 2022 to give life to a much faster circuit, eliminating these chicanes and redesigning some curves like 6 or 13. In its history, Australia has had only 2 world champions. Jack Brabham, a 3-time champion in 1959, 1960, and 1966. And the last to win the title was Alan Jones in 1980 for the Williams team. Despite this, no Australian has ever won or officially stood on the podium at their home Grand Prix. The best Australian result was achieved by Daniel Richard, who finished second in 2014. But he ended up being disqualified after that competition, and with that he was erased from the record. So officially, the best results for an Australian in this competition have been 3 fourth places. 1 from Webber in 2012, and 2 from Ricciardo in 2016 and 2018. The lap record in this race is held by Charles Leclerc, who set it in 2024 with a time of 1:19.813. Ferrari holds the record for the most wins, 14, in the history of the Australian Grand Prix, and has the most drivers who have stood on the podium as winners of this race. In Formula One history, Sebastian Vettel and Jenson Button both have 3 wins. The all-time top winner is Michael Schumacher, winning 4 times in 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2004. These are just some of the historical records, in addition to the data from the 2025 Australian Grand Prix in Formula One. With this, we conclude the first preview of the year, the Australian Grand Prix. But this is where I ask you, which team do you see as the strongest to take the victory? Which team do you think will surprise and which will disappoint in this competition? And let me know your predictions of who will be the top 3 drivers to occupy the podium at the end of the Australian Grand Prix this Sunday. Let me know all your opinions in the comments section. Without further ado, I invite you to give this video a thumbs up and help us continue to grow on this platform. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for this channel. I also invite you to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. The links are in the video description. And I, Uncle Skyline, bid farewell, saying we'll meet this Sunday for the summary at the end of the Australian Grand Prix. Thank you for tuning in, and see you later. Thank you.